This next lesson is the soil critters, the unsung heroes of the forest. So in this lesson, some things you're going to want to do to prep. You want to make sure that you have all of your soil critter cards. You've got some hand lenses or magnifying glasses for your students, and that you have a big roll of yarn. These are all going to be important materials while you're out here in the forest. So to start this lesson, we're going to start with the engage again, which is a moment to grasp everybody's attention. And so I like to have students gather around and silently look around the forest and make some observations. They might notice some tall trees, some grass and leaves. They might notice their smells. I heard a few birds. There's all different things that they're going to notice. But now we're going to ask them to think of things that they don't notice, which is kind of tricky. So you're going to have them close their eyes again and imagine that they are the size of an ant. They're so small. And I want them to imagine, put all their energy down into the ground where the ants are crawling around. And now what are they noticing? What's going on underneath their feet that they can't see, that they can't hear, but we know is happening? Maybe even have them sit down on the ground to get closer to that feeling. And then share out some of their ideas. What is happening under the ground? What is happening inside the bark of a tree or inside the leaves? There are so many processes, and we're going to look at just a few, including decomposition. All right, so for the next part of the activity, we're going to have students go on a micro hike. So what they're going to do is they're going to take their two little fingers, and that's going to become their sense of self. So they're going to be shrinking down. Now, I always like to be a little playful to encourage students to really go there because they have to use their imagination, and sometimes that can be a little tricky to get into that imaginative headspace. And so I like to create kind of this illusion of stepping into a different world. And so what I'm chosen for here today is that these two big ponderosa pines are like my giant shrink ray. And so I'm going to have students follow me through. And as we get close to these ponderosa pines and step through, they need to experience shrinking down to the size of an ant. So you can make noises or you can whoosh at them as they step through. Then you're going to go, and I'm going to become a teeny tiny ant. Now they can go and explore any area within the boundaries that you set, but just remind them that they're tiny and they have to get way down low and imagine that their eyeballs are at the place of their fingers. And what do they notice? How does it feel? What does it look like from this perspective? And they are going to hike and hike and hike and explore through the small parts of our forest. They might do a little digging. They might find something that they want to pick up and look at more closely. And then they'll keep going. And they're going to hike and hike and hike until you give them some instructions to come back together, find a partner, show them where they hiked, explain some of the things that they noticed, like some chunks of bark with holes from insects, some little webs and nests. Maybe it was something that they couldn't identify, and they were curious about it. And then have them come back to the whole group and share their experience. For the explain portion of this lesson, we're going to dive deeper into a soil food web. So you want to start by gathering the group back up after their observations from their micro hike. And you're going to explain that a lot of the things that they noticed on their micro hike are a part of the soil food web. And the soil food web includes plants, animals, bacteria, protozoa, fungi, and all of these different pieces create this web of life and decomposition within the soil. You're going to hand out a soil food web card to each student and give them a few moments to kind of look it over and really take on that role that's their card, and they're going to have that one for the rest of this activity. Then you're going to have students take a few minutes just to mingle. They're going to introduce themselves as their card. Maybe they're a protozoa, and they're going to go up and say hi and say what eats them and what they eat, which is all going to be on that card, very clearly stated. This should be very quick, just kind of an introduction to what some of these different players in the soil food web are, and then you're going to gather everybody in a nice large circle once again. Once they're in this circle, you're going to take out that big roll of yarn. You're going to have one of the cards start, and it's going to be the roots and shoots card, one of our plant cards, right? The roots that go down into the soil and the shoots that come up. And so you're going to hand them that yarn, and you're going to ask the group, is there anybody here who interacts with the roots and the shoots? Give them a minute to think. It's always important to give that wait time. And then you're going to hopefully be able to find some of those nematodes and protists are raising their hands that they eat those roots and shoots. You're going to then connect that soil food web. We're going to actually build a physical web using the yarn. And so they're going to, roots and shoots is still going to hold one end, and you're going to take that other end over to the protists or nematodes. And we're going to continue to build that web. And sometimes there's more than one animal or fungus or plant that's going to be involved. And so you might need to make a few connections before moving on to the next piece. Eventually, you'll have a big interwoven web of all these different creatures, and there's no one right way to create it. So if one day it looks like one side is really full and the other is more empty, and then the other day with another group it shifts, that's just fine. It's just an opportunity to kind of show that visual web of how all these different little teeny tiny components are working together beneath our feet. For the elaborate portion of this lesson, we're going to be looking at decomposition, because that is a huge process that takes place underneath our feet and in the soil that all of these soil food web critters participate in and is vital to the health of our forest. So you're going to explain decomposition, remind students that it's the process of breaking down bigger things into smaller things and recycling those nutrients. And then you're going to hand out magnifying lenses to every student. And again, within the boundaries that you set, you're going to let them explore and look for signs of decomposition. Now that can mean a lot of things. They might find some scat, they might find some fungus, and one of my very favorite things that they might find is an above ground log that is mid-decomposition, because there's just so many cool things that they can explore within it. Now, I've traveled just a little ways down the campground trail, but when you're using this lesson and gaining confidence with it, feel free to explore and find other places that are going to be really good for this lesson. I love this spot because we have access to a lot of downed logs, stumps, and other decomposing debris. So you're going to encourage students to really use their magnifying lenses. They can dig around in these logs, move them around, see what they find. And it's really all about observation. They just get to explore during this part and get to know these decomposing materials even better. Have conversations with other students while they're doing it. I found some fungus. Yeah, there's so much in there. Definitely limit it in time, maybe 5 to 7 minutes of exploring, and then gather the group back together to evaluate and reflect. To close this activity, to evaluate and reflect, you want to remind students that the soil food web is a vital component that makes the whole ecosystem healthier. And that one way that we can help is to encourage these critters and soil critters and fungus and bacteria to come and live where we live. And so they're going to be creating and designing an insect hotel in their notebooks. You can show them some of the example insect hotels and really take some moments to observe with them what some of the important features of an insect hotel are. Point out in their notebooks the list of materials that they might use to build and design their insect hotel, and remind them that they're kind of keeping in mind that they were creating this insect hotel for their school. And who knows, maybe their school will even build one when they get home. Make sure that you are also encouraging students again to share their ideas. Maybe they can collaborate with a partner to come up with their insect hotel design, and always offer an opportunity to share out to the whole group at the end if there are students who want to share their drawings and sketches, and make sure that they label their drawings. Always important for a good designer. Lastly, modifications for this lesson that you might consider. If social distancing is something that is being implemented during this lesson, you want to make sure that you have enough hand lenses for every single person in every single group so you don't necessarily have to be sanitizing between groups. Another thing to consider is for that soil food web, it's really not possible to do if you're social distancing in the way that's described in the lesson. So some other options would be to maybe present it on a board or to have it already set up on the ground and let students walk around and observe it. It's not quite as interactive, but I think it will still get the point across. Mobility for this lesson can really happen anywhere on site. So whatever mobility factors are involved, you can modify and move this lesson anywhere that you need to. And lastly, for time, with this lesson, you might have extra time, you might not have quite as much time, so look at those extra options. One of my very favorites though is to maybe have a handful of like baby food jars or little plastic containers that students can go out on a critter catch if there's extra time to look for some of those soil critters, spiders, ants, millipedes, all that good stuff that's out and about.